I definitely agree that people think too much, especially myself. So here's where we can make the kind of differentiation. People who don't have as much of a high attention span, people that haven't dug deep enough. Let's say someone who's more in like the early levels of self-development, of business, and of really cracking the codes. They actually don't think enough. So both of us, I'm sure, at a point in our life, like we didn't think enough. Most people don't think enough. So I gotta disagree on the fact that most people overthink. But whenever you filter those people out, and then you have the people that are actually have thought enough to decide where they want to go and have started taking the right steps. Maybe they're doing it for decades. Maybe they've only been doing it for 6 months. Nowadays, because of a lot of people speaking about different things and there's different standards and people go through all these different advices and then they think, oh, if I don't wake up at 3 a.m., like, am I a loser? But then if I don't get 8 hours of sleep, then I'm going to be tired. And then they basically compare a whole bunch of things together, and it makes self-development an overthinking process. That's definitely something I went through before. One of the things that actually helped me so much in the past year and a half, really kind of elevate, I always just keep on finding that when I elevate and grow into new levels, it's not just about adding more, but it's a lot about removing BS, whether that's limiting beliefs, whether that's bad habits, etc. And one of the bad habits and limiting beliefs, one of the things that infect us in our mind is that overthinking. So removing that and being able to get in more of the flow of life and being able to just control, like, okay, I cut that out. Like we just take that out, like kick that out. We don't have to take everything in and evaluate it in. When you get 5 pieces, 10 pieces of information, you have to now become better at kicking most of them out and then really choosing what you feel, choosing the perfect. Once you get at a point where you can then decide, like, okay, this is my lifestyle design, and then keep on carving out a perfect aspect of it, it makes everything simpler. So once you understand, like, this is not who I am, like, this is not what I want, then it becomes easier to reject.
Your body will release emotions where your primal self, your ancestors, would get those emotions when they see a lion and they have to run or fight. And so what it does is a lot of the stimulus we encounter, it puts us into fight or flight. And part of it is like recognizing that.
I would have to say this is where becoming an expert at the mind becomes a major advantage. So many people, you think, if you feel like you don't want to become an expert in the mind, I don't think you realize that everybody you think who's an expert in their field, it's like, oh, athletes are not experts in their mind. Oh, I like this guy. He doesn't seem like he's an expert in the mind. He doesn't seem like he studies all that. Well, in one way, shape, or form, they study the mind more than anything. And one example, athletes, you feel like it's mostly all physical, but 80-90% of it they can all attest to is mental. Anyways, going back to really understanding how the mind works, this is where you can just that one easy differentiation between the unconscious, subconscious, and the conscious mind is understanding, like, which one benefits me how. Because you can just switch off between them. That's also a skill which you can get better at. But it doesn't mean, just completely stop overthinking, or, Dick, you should think more. For example, I actually started talking about this a couple weeks ago more and in some videos. Okay, the conscious mind is still very good because your consciousness is the authentic voice of God, right? And whenever you want to make, let's say, very conscious decisions when it comes to decision making, when it comes to really thinking about something, although it only occupies a very small amount of normally when you're on autopilot, you can really decide, okay, I'm going to be conscious right now and then make this happen. Because the last thing you want when you're making a life-changing decision, or the last thing you want when you really have to think logically, is, let's say there's some negative program that got put in you from days before, or from the early parts of your life, or from what someone else told you, etc. You don't want to be, although I would assume a lot of you guys do the right things to positively affect your unconscious mind, you wouldn't want something big, a logical decision to be affected by it. And especially if you want to do something aligned, I mean, normally, if you try to tap into God, that's you tapping into a higher frequency. So if you tap into God, if you tap into the higher power, and you listen to that and you make decisions based on that, I think you'll win more times than not. I think that you'll end up happier more times than not. I think that that's a superpower. So being able to tap into that extremely consciously, a higher level of the consciousness, but then also not always staying in those states. Sometimes I stay too much in those states. When is it good to actually remove that and, well, not remove it, but just allow the subconscious to take over, is when you're in the flow of life. When you're in the flow of life, when you're enjoying things, when you're in a task, when you have to, do a certain piece of work, whatever career you're in. If you're in sports, that's performing a game. If you're even just working, when you get into deep work, if you're obviously writing, if you're doing any creative work, etc. And you have to understand how to remove that. Also, in the flow of life, even like social things. Social things is a perfect example. That's a perfect example of how it can actually hurt you. Like if you're thinking way too consciously, it hurts you in a social setting. Why? Because you can't back out of anything. It just has to flow. So if you try to stop the flow, you cannot create resistance. That's why a lot of people who teach social things or confidence, one of the main things they talk about is getting into state. How soon can you get into state? How soon can you just let it flow? And flow is always the answer.
If you have all of these programs, all of these constructs in your mind that really don't serve you, limiting beliefs, negative emotional states that you're constantly bombarded in, you're going to get into flow state with that. Mm-hmm. So let's say you're in a social setting and you're thinking, the thoughts are going to be different than somebody who has different programs and different beliefs about life and their just worldview in general. When you default to the subconscious, I mean, one needs to ask themselves, like, what are these programs? And which of these beliefs are serving me? Which of these beliefs are not serving 100%. Me? Because if you just go about life without ever asking that question, if you had a belief installed in you, which is completely untrue, which is completely faulty, and you let that be the driving force of your life, because as soon as it gets to a time in the day where your conscious mind, your willpower runs out, you're going to default to the patterns of the subconscious. Mm-hmm. And if that doesn't serve you, you might make a mistake that you cannot recover from.
Probably one of the only things I suffer from is being too bored of repeating the same thing. Like I see so many of the top people who speak on certain issues, or let's say have a mission and get hundreds of millions of people on that mission. They can say the same thing over and over on every interview. And this is like, what I'm about to say is so true. I just almost didn't say it yet because it's like I've said it so much because it's so true. So I'm going to say it. And what you said is exactly right. In the end of the day, the unconscious will influence the conscious, and whenever you get into that flow. So what is the root of everything is what is the program that you're putting in. Mm-hmm. The program that you're putting in is the beliefs about the world, about yourself, and beliefs make up the most of your reality. So that's basically the reality that you're going to end up tapping into later on, right? So how can you go in, decide what to weed out, decide to change it, and there's a lot of ways that you can do it. All of those come in multiple different ways. When people think affirmations, it's not just like saying it to yourself in the morning. Affirmations are things that you say to yourself all the time. Affirmations are actually, I would say, words that come from other people too. Like, what do you block out? What do you bring in? That's why the environment of the people you're around and what they say matters so much. Because this is why when people say the top 5 people who hang around, all that stuff, because they're always saying affirmations of a positive reality or of a reality you would want, and then that automatically becomes what you hear most of the time. All of that is input into your mind. So what everybody needs to do, if they're still making a change or needs to make a reverse, if things are just not going how they want, they need to change the programming. And then once you're already on the right stage, you still need to continuously change the programming. Like my most progressive months every single year are the first 2 months, because I consciously, not consciously, on purpose, build like a new identity. And I'm always building a new identity and moving up and up and up. But you can see as soon as you replace your old identity even by 5%, 10%, that is all it needs to take you up a notch. And like we said, beliefs are lifelines and the realities you live in. This is all that matters. That's all you want. All you're chasing is a better life, and you want more of this and more of that. But you're chasing it rather than going in and actually creating the program that's going to attract it, or creating the program that's just going to get what it's supposed to do, be what it's supposed to be. That's the different game that people aren't playing. And that's the game that the more people master and the more people get in control of, then they will be 100% in control of their life, because it's all going to lead into everything else. It's all going to lead into the right conscious decisions later. It's all going to lead into the right habits, et cetera, et cetera.
Awareness, I always say, is the first step. We get awareness over their current identity. And the current identity has led to the quality of life that they have now. And so people struggle with this one thing where they know what they need to do, Leo. They know the problems that they have. They know the solution, but they don't take action on it. Like, what is that driving force for people who are just constantly in this low vibrational state, which is negative emotions, like fear, feeling like scarcity exists? Why do they keep doing the same things that they do? And the biggest part of it is your body at some point has, through the continuous reinforcement of your identity, has become addicted to those emotions. Mm-hmm. Because how we started off the conversation is the primal mind. Mm-hmm. Like, your mind, if your subconscious identity, all it knows is these programs that create these negative emotions.
Stress, scarcity. I know so many people who are...
It's just going to reinforce it. And you don't realize it. You don't realize the fact that you're addicted. Mm-hmm. Because nothing can be wrong, but if that's what the programs that you have, your mind will manipulate information, like what you see, what you hear. And that information is going to be manipulated, and it's going to lead you to take a specific type of action. Yeah. Which reinforces the entire cycle. And so to break out of it, that's where the conscious mind comes in. Yeah. The conscious mind needs to be
Conscious mind is where you can do the pattern interrupt. Yes. And then make the changes, put the next
But that's why awareness is so important. So you use the conscious mind to audit the subconscious. Yeah. It's like going in and saying, okay, great. So what here isn't serving the goals and desires that I have? And from there, you build your identity.
Which is why I say all the time that awareness is so key, because although the conscious mind is where the shifting of the gears and you have to make a decision to then change the program in the first place, that's why most changes happen probably in some really negative period. Yeah. I mean, my biggest change is when I was just like sick of a bunch of stuff, and I'm like, I'm sick of it. There has to be a change. Even when things are really going good, this has to change like that. That's why auditing and awareness and everything is also very good. But back to a couple of things you said before, I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. At least myself, maybe other people not, but the aspect of taking full responsibility and everything, by the way, it's true. I'm not saying it's not true, but everybody has heard it. Maybe another angle that could help you with that, if you still fully don't understand, is acceptance. Because acceptance, if you don't have acceptance, then you can't make anything out of any information, because if that's not a reality, then you can't change the reality, then you don't have control. Yeah. Acceptance, we used to think was a low frequency because we didn't want to accept a negative reality, like, oh, I don't accept this reality, but we used to think that was actually a good thing to do. But actually accepting it is the right thing to do, because accepting it is on the frequency chart is a high frequency, number one. And number two, when your acceptance, you can actually, in a state of acceptance, it feels good, because then it's almost like nothing can harm you. And at that point, it feels good because you're in control. And it feels good because you have more awareness. Acceptance is the only way you can get awareness, because you're not rejecting the situation. So I agree with that 100%.
So it's to enter flow, it doesn't just start in that specific moment, but I think awareness is key, because what are you doing a lot of the time is the thoughts that you're having while doing those specific activities that you desire to be in flow in. Those activities are creating some kind of, like, that information is being processed by the subconscious, and the subconscious is going to create some thoughts, and those thoughts is what you want to gain awareness over. And so I don't think there's just band-aids, because if I tell somebody, hey, do breath work or do meditation, it'll get you into the present moment, whether they do it or not, if they do it in the way of, oh, here's the solution to my problem, then it just becomes another band-aid. You don't get to the root of the problem. Like, in our society, all we have is band-aids. You go to the doctor, they give you a band-aid. They treat the symptom, not the cause. Same with society. You say, hey, I'm overthinking. They're like, okay, do this, do this, do this. A bunch of band-aids. What people aren't doing is connecting to the core of who they are, which requires stripping away who you are not.
The inner body, tapping into the inner body kills the pain body.
The primary thing, like core 3 tools that have helped me is, number 1 is meditation. Meditation isn't necessarily doing something, it's about doing less. It's about observing the unconscious. When you sit down with your eyes closed, you remove a primary stimulus that is a driving force in your life, which is your sight. Yeah. In that darkness, you're left with hearing and thoughts. Thoughts arise.
A whole lot, even more.
A lot, yeah. And some people cannot sit with themselves. If you can't sit with yourself for 3 minutes, there's a lot, like, you shouldn't be doing more, you should be doing less. And that's one key way to get awareness. But sometimes it's a little too intense for people, especially in the early stages. You can't sit down. You're too afraid of yourself. Yeah. And that's where I'd say breath work. Because now we're placing the focus, directing it to the breath. And whether you're doing like pranayama or some kind of other breath technique, now you're allowing yourself to drag the mind into flow through that process. Yeah. But even beyond that, I'd say you have to connect to the core of who you are. Like, what do you want out of life? And usually the first answer isn't really the answer that people really resonate with. Because you've grown up, especially us, we're young. So we've had access to technology for the majority of our lives. We grew up with technology. And so depending on the beliefs that were instilled in us by society and our parents and family and friends in the first 7 years of our life, those beliefs have evolved, and we have reinforced these beliefs with technology. Yeah. But the reason I say that is because that kind of gives you insight into what your current thought patterns are. Like, what are you currently doing?
And what I gotta say, based on the, like I said, to make the separation so everybody can take in what's best for them, that's key. This is why one-on-one coaching works so well. Yes. But for the people that are a little bit earlier, a lot of times what they understand is, okay, well, what do I get in state for? Like, what do I prime myself for? Like, and that's when you use the awareness to really understand like what you need to do, and then you find a bunch of different things to do. But now for the actual people that, like, they know exactly what they need to be primed for. They know exactly, what they're already thinking, like, oh, what can I use these things for? These are some of the best ways to prime yourself for anything. So, like you said, meditation is key because it brings you to the present moment, eliminating the thoughts. Meditation is key, but also completely the opposite, like yelling or just creating a bunch of noise or going crazy. Going crazy, dancing, that gets you into state because normally you're not doing that. So if you just fucking scream or if you just get hyped, then that eliminates that part of like overthinking. It's like, oh shit, I guess we're into state now. Yeah. As well as that's why music, dancing, I'm always in a good frequency. I'm always dancing, especially in the gym. But when there's music, right? I'm not just using it to brain rot. So for example, the gym is a form of meditation. Any adversity is huge. So the gym, cold exposure, cold shower, or like a lot of people apparently are doing now, putting ice on their face. Which just do a cold bath. Like, I don't know how that would help, but as well as people gain so much momentum when they go through kind of negative points of adversity in their life. When they win, that creates the winner effect. It starts to compound. On and on. Last thing would be doing something which shocks yourself, something which you wouldn't have done before. don't you ever realize that whenever something goes into shock, this can even be a negative thing, or something quick that you have to act on, which is a positive thing. Some people might enter fight or flight and then freeze if they're too conscious. But the right person would save this person's life or take care of business and come up clutch. And in those moments, you're 5 times, 10 times probably more effective because it immediately shocks you. Okay, this needs to be done in the next 5 minutes, whatever. And then you do what you need to get done. But what are some other ways you can shock yourself? Well, there's a lot of different ways you could shock yourself, but cold exposure, once again, is one of them. Putting pain to the body is one of them. And one major way to also hypnotize yourself or prime yourself extremely, extremely powerfully is the shock of, for example, your breath, right? So if you literally like hold a thought and then you remove your breath until you almost can't breathe, that puts your body into a state of shock. So whatever thought you were thinking about at that moment is vibrating through your body because it created an induction. That's one example. Now that's like you understand that example and you're like, oh shit, that's cool. I might try it. See how you can incorporate that into your life all the time, but also see what other things you can do for that. When I do my morning routine, which has always improved, and there's like a set morning routine I would give to different people in different parts of their life. There's a lot of crazy things I do, which I put together from a bunch of different things that prime me for the day. One of the things, like you said, is breath work. That's something I didn't used to do over a year ago. But the breath work that I do is I mix up, I kill a couple birds with one stone. So I do the breath work, so I'm getting oxygen to my body, which makes me more awake, which makes me happier, etc. And once I'm doing that, I'm actually using it as like a form of hypnotizing myself to what I want. So I'm holding thoughts of what I want. That's just one little thing. There's other things I do when I'm in cold exposure, which I do where I get the benefits of a bunch of things at once. So always when it comes to your morning routine, whatever things, based on everything you know, try a bunch of different things and see how it primes you for the day. The last thing I'm going to say, touching on what you said actually earlier, is when you get into flow or when you let the unconscious rule, it's important to know what you want and who you are. So knowing what you want is the core root of actually what you need to consciously place before any task. Maybe right now, your unconscious mind is not fully programmed to what you want, but you have to do this thing tomorrow or tonight, whatever. Okay, well, you might as well, or you have to every single time, you should, is really plant exactly what you want at the end of this thing, how you want to be feeling. Do you want to feel like you won? Do you want to feel like you smashed it? Do you want to imagine other people saying you did good? Do you want to imagine yourself very satisfied with what happened? And do you want to imagine yourself having that winner effect? Okay, well, that's the place you want to get at. This even happens with social things. Do you want to imagine that these people end up liking you, or if you start to play a sport, do you want to imagine that you scored X amount of goals? Whatever it is, every single person does this. Before you go back into the absolute present moment, you need to program yourself for what's going. That's how you create the target for your unconscious mind to do. And if you don't have those things, whether or not you have those things, you need to do those for long-term things too. That's where the goals come. That's where the identity comes, on and on. So always program yourself, create targets in the future and short-term.
Yeah, so if I was to ask you this question, which is, if I give you 2 puzzles, 5,000 pieces each, one of them is just a white picture, and the other one is a picture where you can use that to help you. And your goal is to make the puzzle efficiently. Which one would you pick?
Can you repeat that?
So you have 2 puzzles. One puzzle is just white. So you have to try to figure out which piece goes where. The second puzzle has a clear picture on it. So you can use the picture to guide you to put the right pieces together. Mm-hmm. Your goal is to be efficient. Which puzzle would you pick?
Well, obviously the one that guides you.
Okay, so that's the same way with our goals, and touching base on what you said. Like, you need to know the destination. If you don't know the destination, you're going to struggle with doing the right things to get you there. Mm-hmm. And so it is really important to set that outcome and have it clear. Like, where are you focusing your attention? Yeah. Because me and you can be in the same space, but the quality of our experience can be completely different based upon the thoughts that we're having about the experience. whether we're having any thoughts at all, because if you're in flow, you might not be thinking like that consciously.
And on a day-to-day, two people could have the same start of the same day, and let's say it both went neutrally, or it both went bad, or both went good. One person can take that and then make the best out of it. Maybe if it went bad, then have a really good bounce back and then change it, use it to have an even better day than they would have had if they didn't have that negative thing. By the way, I suggest that's how you should think. If there's anything you don't like, anything that pisses you off early in your day or early in anything that happens, instead of going down that route unconsciously of more and more and more of what you don't want to happen, you need to know when to put the stop. And then when you put the stop, you need to decide, you know what? Not just, oh, I got to fix this, because you don't want to just fix it. You got to decide, okay, at the end of this day or at the end of this task or at the end of this month, if it's a month-long thing, I'm going to actually end up in a much better position than I would have if this bad thing never happened, right? So that's how you completely flip the script. When it comes to a lot of things that affect your state, affect your mind, without even you realizing, so it's not self-inputted. So we talked a little bit about those. We could a little bit more, but things that, like one of them was like your environment, so people you're listening to, things you're listening to online, people you surround yourself with, etc. But music is one great example. So with music, it's literally a mantra that keeps on replaying in your head. And there's a lot of things that maybe people say or people talk about that you don't want to keep. I don't understand like when there's music which is like a heartbreak song or like a sad song or like some sip song, like something bad mindset, like
it reinforces the problem.
And after that gets stuck in your head, and that's playing on the radio to hundreds of millions of people. And maybe you caught it not on purpose, but at the gym. Like, I don't like being in public places where there's like music, unless I can like stop it, but I just don't like those things getting stuck in my head. And then you're like thinking, oh, I'm a loser. Da, da, da. It's like, what kind of, like, why would you want to listen to that music? You know what I mean? So you can take something like music, and music it's probably for most people is actually something harmful for them, besides a little bit of good vibes they get and good experiences they get. But what if it gives you good vibes? What if it puts you in a good frequency? What if it can give you good experience, make you live life better? Sometimes you can't control it. You're at a bar or whatever. I get it. But for yourself, in the gym, in the morning, in the house, in the car, don't you want the music to be able to, one, tap you into a good frequency, give you good vibes, like, once again, put you in that state where it just makes you keep on winning more or makes you keep on being more and more happy? But also, if you have music that's like house music or whatever, or jazz makes you calm or whatever, you can easily figure that out. But music with words, like, what are they saying? A lot of rap music can be pretty violent, can be negative, I guess negatively minded. But, I mean, shit, all the rap that I listen to talks about money, getting rich, hitting your goals, becoming better, and basically just like being a boss, and but like certain things I want. I'm sure there's like some things like I don't want to hear. Sometimes when I hear it, I'm like, nah. I was like talking about some satanic, like, nah. You know what I mean? But most of the time, like, puts me in a good state. Most of the time, I mean, when you're in the gym, if rap music helps you in the gym because you're like feeling more powerful, you feel more like a boss, your testosterone's being boosted, then yeah, maybe you don't want to always think about lust because that's going to lead to other bad decisions, but feel those emotions, feel that frequency. Maybe control your playlist. That's just a little thought nobody would have given you. Control your playlist, control the songs that are on cue, especially at certain times of the day, of what you want to be primed for. If you don't believe that there is, I didn't believe that there is. I used to think that, oh, most rap music or this music is about drugs and stuff, and I would just listen to it, when I was in that period of my life. But actually, in whatever genre you like, there's so much out there which you can curate to put you in the right mental space. And let me tell you, knowing that it's actually helping you makes it sound better. It makes it more enjoyable. So do that. Give it a try.
Yeah, I mean, it just comes down to doing things that are going to put you in a state where you have positive emotions and you feel good, because that's going to allow you to then do the things that you should be doing, and it's going to be inspired actions. Like, you can get a full-time education a lot of the time, especially if you're driving a lot, just by listening to something other than music while you're driving. Yeah. Like, if you're listening to a podcast and you're driving an hour a day, that stacks up. That's 30 hours in the month. So you can figure out, like, okay, where can I, like, minimize music? Interest in the music industry. Because if it programs minority communities to kill people, have sex, do drugs, then that's gonna fund the prison system. More prisoners, more people. Yeah,
they're the leaders. They're the things
it does, and it keeps people in a weakened state. I mean, it
100%, bro. Like, well, a couple years ago when I was not doing the right things, and people around me were not doing the right things and everything, like, we would all listen to music of people talking about that, and then they wanted to be like the people talking about the music, and then they would end up doing those same things. And sometimes, like, I would even realize, like I would have, like, some dude at a party saying, like, oh, I want to do this stupid thing just like it says in the song, and I'm like, bro, what? Exactly what you're talking about. But what you said about the dopamine is true. I found that it is very true, and with the learning and with the podcasts, everybody's going to listen to music anyways, though. That's something I've been doing a lot more because I'm in that period of my life. But 100%. In dopamine detox periods of my life, I even saw that, just like a whole bunch of different things, just like, things that give you dopamine spikes, scrolling on your phone, doing drugs, things that there's a lot more. All of those obviously put you into it. It depletes your dopamine and then makes it harder to do the hard things. I feel like most people understand that by now. I don't think there's a lot more to say about it. I'm not going to touch on it now, but what you said about the podcast is 100% true. That's what built up so much of my input. So unconscious mind is not just identity, but inputs. Identity is, with any emotion you said too. Like, if you want to be happier, boom, just change your identity. I'm a happier person. Yes. But inputs are what you get the information from, which is, for example, I like to use two completely different things. So, for example, in speaking, right, if you have the inputs of studying what you're talking about, it's going to be so easy. And you're going to be a professional about it. But if you're, playing basketball, if you're trying to play soccer, what are the inputs there? Well, it's not really studying how to kick a ball, but it's all the practice. So someone who, like, mixes the identity with all the practice, so they get all the inputs, that's the mind, muscle reactions, everything, then that's going to come out in a game. And that's the same thing, which practice comes a lot. Practice is a lot of the inputs, but also information. Okay, so that's why feeding as much podcasts, books, and videos or texts from the right places, all as much as you can do it, even when you're not paying attention. Like you said, in the car, I've done that so much. I've had the periods where I was just listening to books in the gym because that was just that, and et cetera, et cetera. And that's something which you should think about doing more if you feel like you don't have enough input, if you feel like you're not in an alpha state enough. So being in an alpha state is when you're working, when you're in flow, but also when you're learning. So when you talk about the attraction world, you actually just sitting there and learning is better than not doing anything, or actually better than stressing about something. So most of people, without even realizing, they're spending so much time in a beta state. So beta, it's literally like beta and alpha. I wonder which one is good. It's in the word. So an alpha state will feel better and make you get more of what you want. There's less resistance. And a beta state is actually, like, in the world of energy, it's not something which is really attracting what you want. It's like almost like a negative repellent. And when you're in a beta state, those are things like overthinking. Those are things like doubting yourself. Those are things like just all these little negative emotions that people normally feel. Most people actually spend most of their time in beta. That's what they don't realize. Oh, that's not me. It might be you, and even if you don't see yourself as that person, how can you eliminate those times? So the good thing about alpha is that it's not the highest, but alpha can be prolonged so long, right? So there's only so much time that you can work and do deep work. There's only so much time you can do the right tasks. There's only so much of those times, right? But what you want to avoid is going back into a shitty state whenever you're not doing those things. This is where easy things like you can just be cooking, or you can just be doing anything. You could just be driving, and you can be sitting there stressed, and you can be overthinking, or you can be learning. Put yourself in an alpha brainwave state where now you're getting ideas while you're learning, while you're tapping into good sources, and you're basically avoiding staying in those negative states. So whenever you're not fully working, then it's good. That's why learning, always just learning, not just for the inputs, not just to learn this and gain something out of it, but literally being in that state helps you. Last thing is gamma. Gamma is where you kind of pierce through, and it's like a blissful, it's like a golden enlightenment state. So certain things that are very pleasurous actually put you in gamma for a little bit. That's why it matters. Also, you can control what you think when you're in those pleasure states. When you're in the gym, probably maybe not when you're like in the pain, but when you're out of it, oh, you best believe we feel gamma right there. People that do that all the time, they manage to just attract better things. Whenever you're feeling blissful, whenever you can just be out when they're in the sun. When you hit that meditation, when you hit that note in meditation, you're like, oh, everything's perfect. That's gamma. So obviously we all want to feel that, but we need to understand how we can reach that, and we can, and it attracts us more. Feeling good attracts us more. Then the last one that doesn't really matter that much is delta. Delta is when you're sleeping. So delta is good because delta, it's not a negative one, but obviously nothing's going to happen if you're always sleeping. But it's good to go back into delta and get really good deep sleep. Everybody knows that. So those are the 4 brain waves that you need to understand how to switch off to and which ones to avoid. It's in the words.
When you wake up in the morning and when you're about to fall asleep, that's when your brain waves are in a lower state. And so this is where you are suggestible.
Yeah.
This is where...
That's when you do the visualization, and that's when you do the affirmations.
So that's when you do it. But with affirmations, it's like, if you're repeating something to yourself and you firmly don't believe it, I think it can help you a lot more if you focus on the resistance that comes up by repeating or saying an affirmation. If I say, for example, I'm really healthy or I'm in shape, and then the belief that comes up or the emotion that comes up is stress and resistance, that means I don't believe it.
Yeah.
And so I can ask myself, great, so where is this in my body? Like, we're so out of touch with the emotional body that you can be like, you just have to do it. This is a lot of the time what I hear too. You just have to do it. Yeah, but you can only rely on motivation, discipline, and willpower so much. Mm-hmm. Only so much. I view that discipline is built into the identity and built into the habit that you're doing. Like, you think Kobe consciously had to convince himself to make 500 shots a day and just go out in the field and practice? It was habitual. It was identity. That's who he was. There was no alternative for him. You don't wake up every morning thinking, what kind of drug am I going to do? Some people do because it's attached to their identity.
Yeah.
But if you don't do drugs, you don't think that.
That's why,
And so it's like, what story are you telling yourself? That's what it comes down to, Leo. Like, when you wake up, or if I ask you, like, who are you? What do you want to, like, what story are you telling yourself? Because this story is going to become reality, if it isn't already.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It is, man. So if you have a negative thought or a low-frequency thought, you're going to get a low-vibe emotion. That's trying to give you insight. That's trying to say, hey, change your thoughts. Like, focus on what you're thinking on really quick. Same with vice versa. Because if you have positive thoughts, guess what you're going to do? You're going to feel good. You're going to be in a higher emotional state. If you think a particular thought and you don't feel anything, there's no emotion tied to it, it's not going to get embedded into the subconscious. Why? Like, when we look at trauma, what is trauma? It's a physical event that generates a really intense emotional state that's just embedded really into the mind, into the subconscious. And then, like, a lot of people with that trauma, you start telling yourself the story. For example, I'm a victim. And you start viewing everything that happens in your life as that story. Process through that. I'm a victim, I'm a victim. And you repeat it to yourself enough, it becomes real. You collapse that quantum, like, possibility out of this field of unlimited possibilities. When I look at successful people and I study successful people, the biggest, I think, driving force of their success is the confidence and the belief in the story that they tell themselves.
Yep.
There is no other reality to them except their reality.
Yes, sir.
And their conscious, belief in that as well is so strong that others begin to believe it. And when others begin to believe it, they start reinforcing your reality.
They go into your frame.
Yeah, they do. And you have to turn the focus of your attention, right? You have to tell yourself a new story. You can tell yourself this new story, but the thing is that it's going to take time for that vibrational reality to catch up to the physical reality. And this is where 99% of people relapse into the story that they were telling themselves in the past. They don't maintain it consistent enough, because if you're saying I'm wealthy but your financial situation is telling you otherwise, it's very difficult to allow yourself to elevate your state of mind beyond what you're just seeing with the senses and tap into, honestly, source, God, the universe, because the universe is ever expanding. And there's so much that we don't understand. And in our lifetimes, we'll learn more, but we will never really understand all that there is. And with that acceptance, it's like, okay, do you trust something higher than yourself? Because if you did, you wouldn't feel so much stress, and you wouldn't just repeat that story that you know isn't serving you. So it's like, do you trust something higher than yourself? Or are you so stuck in this 3D of what you see that you can't help but just keep telling yourself the same story?
Trusting something higher than yourself is basically a full faith belief in something kind of in your favor, because if normally you'd think God's in your favor. I'm gonna get into something a lot about the story. Yo, can we do blue? Let's get some blue.
You want to switch them up?
Yeah, let's do some blue.
We can do blue on both sides.
You want blue too?
Yeah.
You want to keep it blue?
Yeah, because the...
Alright, cool. Story is, once again, what you're programming yourself to do. It's frame. It's everything. And you look at some people on a major sense. Think right now, like, damn, this guy just wins and wins and wins and wins. That kind of is like my story. In enough time, 50 years, 80 years, 100 years, maybe plus, I'm gonna live out that good story. So I'll be one of those guys. But when you think of the people like that, they just have that story where, like you said, like inevitably I win. Like I'm going to end up winning. I'm going to end up getting this. This is gonna happen, no matter what. And then if there's bumps in the road that make the story have to change, then all they do is instead of the story's ruined, now it just becomes just effortlessly flipping the script once again in their favor. Your mind is always that's conscious, creating the story. Writing the story is conscious. But then living it out, you have to be unconscious to act out the script. Okay, so stories is in the short term and in the long term. So this happened with so many clients of mine where there's different things happening in different parts of their life, but we all know their results. Rather than those things, and I can give a bunch of different examples, but rather than one of those things, rather than slowing them down, I'm always reinforcing the story. If I wasn't there, no matter, let's say they had a really good mindset, they would be like, oh yeah, I'll get through it. Great, you'll get through it. What about this? What about ending up at a point where this thing actually made you reach your goal 10 times, maybe not 10 times more, but at a certain level, and you ended up at that much, just change the script once again, even more in your favor. Because of this, you end up in a better position. And then live it out with an edge instead of with a disadvantage. So every disadvantage you feel like you might have right now, I'm actually so happy we went into this, because changing my story is one of the things that helped me the most in the beginning, because I'm like, I'm not doing the things I want. Oh, wait, I have this potential. I'm talking about years back. And I'm not doing it. When you're not going in the right part of your life, unfortunately, you feel like, shit, like the story is kind of messed up. But that's the thing. You need to widen it out and then rewrite your story. You need to understand where I am right now. Like, no matter where you are right now, no matter what has happened to you, no matter what's going to happen to you that you don't want, or what you're in the middle of, make that part of your story. And guess what? Maybe if it's even more messed up, shit, I guess that's a more interesting story.
Embrace it.
Everybody likes to have a good story, sure. But maybe you'll have a story that has this in it and ends up at that point. So what is the inevitable point that you want to end up at? We need to think about this more. And that's what's going to allow you to actually change your life, because rather than being a victim, rather than being at a disadvantage, you put yourself in an advantage, and you live out that story. Your mind's going to live out a story no matter what, no matter if it's in a 30-minute thing you need to do, a 5-minute thing you need to do, or a lifetime. So it's absolutely massive. I'm happy you mentioned that. What you also talked about with the first 30 minutes of the day and the last 30 minutes of the day, or 45 minutes, something along those lines, is when your mind is most receptive. That's where I do my morning routine and my night routine. And usually some of the first things I like to do is the wiring. Some of the last things I like to do is related to wiring. That also means pay attention to what you're thinking about when you are in bed. Sometimes you finish the routine, but you're in bed for another hour. So yeah, ideally, you're always moving it forward. Now, you don't want to have it hold you back. You don't want to overthink it, once again. But as long as you make it habitual and you never miss, that's something I've never, because of how important I understand it is, that's something I've never missed in. That's something, and I say this all the time, like, people are so surprised when I say that I'm 20, and, you're also pretty young too, and I thought you were honestly a lot older, but the things that we know and the way that we act is because we've done just like 5 times more work into our mind than what a lot of other people have done. And there's nothing wrong with it. They can always change it. They can always change it in 1 year, in 3 years. And I changed my entire life in 1 year. And when my life was already changed, I, once again, the year after, changed again even more than I could have even thought of. This is when tapping in becomes so powerful. Because let's say right now you think you're doing so good. You think things are so good. Now, you can either fall back into homeostasis, which is something more normal, maybe something a little bit less good. I'm going to go a little bit down for a second. Nope. I mean, you will have waves like this, but if this is your limit, the people that are at the absolute best, and I only want to be the absolute best, I don't see any other reality, and I know that's just what it is, and that's how I frame my life, that's how I frame myself, my identity. So if you want to reach those next levels, you can't always obviously fully program yourself. That takes time. So you always need to keep moving the goalpost forward in terms of who you want to be. Once you start actually becoming this person, now you want to keep advancing it to a higher level forward. But that's why being able to tap into the higher power through certain habits and through a state of awareness, through higher consciousness, gives you so much power, because there's no limit in that world. That world, the divine intelligence, the infinite intelligence, all the different great sounding words you can give it, has no limits. So whatever even you think is the highest possibility in this current world that you see, examples, great, that's a competition to beat. But guess what? It can be way bigger than that. There's no limits. So once you can tap into that limitless zone, that divine zone, the infinite zone, then instantly you can break past those limits and then keep on pushing forward at rates that you never thought was possible. That's something I've ended up being really good at. That's something which surprises me in things that end up happening in my life. Wow, I can't believe I attracted this. Wow, I can't believe these things happened. But because of the things I know I've done, it's not even surprising. It's just normal. So that's what it's about.
Yeah, man, I would want to say this to people who are our age, maybe a little bit younger and also a little bit older. Our minds, as they're developing, which just stops around 25, 26, are much more plastic than individuals who are 40, 50, 60, 70 years old. And so the story that you tell yourself is dependent on the identity that you currently have. And so you really need to ask yourself, if you continue like this, what is your life going to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15, 20, 30 years from now? And if the destination is not where you wanted, you need to take immediate action. Because if you don't make that change, it's going to be a lot more difficult to rewire your mind, as we call it. Mm-hmm. Because your mind isn't going to be as plastic as it is now. Neuroplasticity is where learning happens. Your mind can take in new information, it can form new neural connections, and that shapes the subconscious. And so this is super important, dude. If an individual watching this is maybe in high school, in college, or in the early years of their life, before 25, it's time now to not, believe or to not look for something outside of yourself, which is actually within yourself as well. When you look for God within yourself, it's a lot different than looking for it outside of yourself. You can find it in both. When you tap into God within yourself, you then start seeing it in everything else around you. You realize there is no separation. And from that state, all you want to do is help others. And from that state, you find that love and joy is really the foundation of that being. And from there, that's where you really want to do nothing but create. Creativity is our nature.
Yeah.
And so is seeking. Creative mode. And so is, the desire to achieve something, because once you achieve that particular thing, you're going to want something else. The universe is continuously expanding, so is our desires. You want something, you're going to work towards it, you're going to achieve it, and then you're going to want something else. And with that mindset of knowing you're going to keep seeking different things, I think it's super important to tap into who you are and find the emotional states and the fulfillment within yourself before achieving the thing, so that when you achieve the thing, you don't feel empty and broken. Because I see that in a lot of people who achieve materially, they feel empty. They feel like, okay, I have it, what now? And it can be with any other thing. When we seek something outside of ourselves to give us the emotional states, it's temporary. Like we call it, like it's a band-aid. Use that to reinforce the thing you're already feeling. Then it just becomes more amplified and powerful. Then it becomes a tool that helps you do even more in life. And then beyond that, I'd say that like connecting to the purpose, that purpose is put within you. It's already there. You have to strip away everything that isn't you to find the purpose.
Yeah, I'm happy that we're both so knowledgeable on this. I love that. Tapping into the creator puts you in creative mode. I love that. I don't know how much I'm able to talk about this, but I have a friend who you could say, let's just say his dad has like a very, very good connection with Michael Jackson, basically the greatest creative or person in entertainment ever. And yeah, he was one of his best friends. And so I went to their studio a couple times where there was like a bunch of art, a bunch of stuff that they have, art that Michael made with like paintings and stuff. Like it's like the craziest things. Like everybody's been there. Presidents. I don't know how much I'm supposed to say. Maybe we could cut it out. But yeah, so there was this one that stuck out to me. A lot of them were really cool. Michael drew things with Gates. I love Gates. He loves Gates chairs, but they're really cool. But there's this one which really stuck out to me, and he even said it in an interview, which is what allowed him to do what he does is because it wasn't him doing it. He was just able to be a physical representation of it, and he was coming from above. In this painting, there was there was a person that was drew like all in terms of like lines, so the person was all like in one, and then on top of that, the person had an antenna, and then the antenna was tapping into the higher consciousness, and I was like, that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what we're talking about. That's the creator giving you creative superpowers. Yeah. The last thing I'm going to say is touching on what we both wanted our audience to hear. Like you said, no matter how successful you are, really imagine like you went ahead and you achieved all those goals, all those things. Like that's great. It's going to probably end up feeling better than you expect because it's 24/7. It's not just a 5-second thought. It's going to feel so good and it's amazing, right? But there is a point where it's like, okay, how do you still tap into something higher? And how do you still keep feeling good? How are you just not left empty? Okay? Even though those things are going to feel good, how do you not left empty? And that's why everybody should find something higher than themselves. And something higher than themselves is not just one certain religion or not just one idea of God, but tapping into God and being with God is also throughout a way of life. Through a way of life, when you're fully present, when you're fulfilling your purpose and you're 100% doing something for the greater good. And a lot of people, that is in multiple different ways, doing something for the greater good, something that way it can be 100% present in doing and being able to tap into the creator while doing it, then that's like what it would want you to do. That's what's going to feel eternal. That's what's going to never make sure that you're never felt empty, because you're feeling 100% aligned. It's going to give you feelings you've never felt before, even when achieving those goals, having fun, making money, and living a good life. And that's something which you're basically tapped into the higher consciousness for, which in the end of the day, that's why a lot of people who achieve everything just become like super spiritual religious, because they want to tap into that. So if you can put it all in one, if you can have that with you throughout the mission, so that once you achieve those goals, you're not just left with nothing, but once you achieve those goals, you're left with something way greater than you could even describe. And you have it also throughout the process. Everybody can do it. And that goes especially to the people that are already doing the right things. You don't need to hear the same thing. Just understand that the potential, that the maximum, the limits are even greater than you can even expect. And then that should make you happy to, get off this and start living that life. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, man. I love how you wrapped it up. And I mean, it comes down to like the fulfillment of it. And we are really just these vessels. And if we strip away what isn't serving us or the greater good, then we can allow these vessels to work the way that they should. We will treat these vessels, these bodies that we have, the way that we should. And that's just going to allow us to, go out there and accomplish great things, really. Because whether the current state of the world right now might not be perfect, and I think we can say it's far from being perfect, what I can say is that as time evolves, whether we're in the positive times or negative times, things move towards the greater good.
Yeah.
And not just believing or having faith, but trusting and resting all anxiety, all stress in that greater good, you'll be left with joy and love and wish nothing but that for your fellow man.
It's the answer. And the only reason people don't do it anymore, do it as much as they should, is because they have in-world responsibilities.
Yeah.
If all that is true, then AI will actually help people become back to real more people, rather than people being the robots.
Mm-hmm.
The robots will do the robot things, and then people can actually come together to that universal truth. And I believe it's possible.
Beautiful. And I love that you touched upon AI, because I believe that is our next topic that we will talk about next time that we're together.
Yes, sir.
Because that in itself, I know you were leveraging it.
We have to focus on the right thing.
Yeah, it is. And same with the algorithms. What the algorithm is feeding you is based off where you're focusing your attention. AI is going to be the same thing.
We can collectively manifest it.
It's going to either amplify the negative or the positive. It's all these tools are just amplifying what we focus on. And so I'm actually really excited, because that is going to be the next thing that we do. And I think that they're going to find that very valuable.
Yes, sir.
So, excellent.
So
See
much
you, my
more,
man.
Dave.
Yeah.